Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode, are you sure you want me to get rid of my server that you use daily? Have fun dealing with the aftermath. I worked ahead of schedule, but I guess I don't work for you anymore. I'm not a student, I'm actually a teach. Nope, off to detention with you. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe so that you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Are you sure you want me to get rid of my server that you use daily? Have fun dealing with the aftermath. TLDR. Guy improves workplace efficiency and all is good. New management and corporate policy doesn't like the efficient way of helping customers, so they disbanded. 24 hours later, the blowback from decommissioned software has now affected business negatively. All could have been avoided if they continued to do what's best for the customer. Thank you, Eurydice for the summary. I'm going to use it if you don't mind. Story. I worked for a large consumer electronics retailer for many years as technical support. I was also in charge of all of the internal devices and computers employees used at my location. Not the computers that were on demo for customers to use comes into play later. The retail stores offered technical support for computers and mobile devices. Now for technical support, there were 2 laptops that I was authorized to configure for use by technicians, load useful software, and allow admin privileges. One such useful tool is called RecPut. This application was freeware. I checked the license and not an internal tool. Back in the days when devices had a physical home button. To put the device in recovery mode, the home and power button would need to be pressed. RecPut allowed a connected device to be put in recovery mode by clicking the recovery mode button. Easy and simple. A lot of devices had this home button stop working. When you were able to access the device, assistive touch could be used for a virtual home button. If the device passcode was forgotten or too many attempts were made and the device was permanently locked, a restore was needed. To do this, the device must be put in recovery mode. Important for later, to laptops with sometimes dozens of customers looking for support, and needing to restore devices or reset account passwords was not great. Obviously, customers would get impatient having to wait longer for support. This was brought up to management. Their solution? Well, there are tons of demo computers. Connect the devices and do restores from them. There ya go, Bob's your uncle. These demo computers were loaded with a demo image and configured that any changes made would be reverted when the computer was restarted. Also, the admin password was a guarded secret. I had the password, but was definitely not allowed to share it. To run RecPut after it had been downloaded from the internet required the admin password, so it only worked for restores. So to do a restore, each demo computer would have to download the restore image, many GB of download, and it would take 20+ minutes just to download one, not even complete a restore. Each device model would need a specific restore image. You can imagine this was not ideal, but to management, hey, it works, problem solved. What I started doing was I would unfreeze a few computers, transfer all of the needed restore images onto them from a local server, and freeze them again. I would also transfer RecPut, launch it, enter the admin password so it wouldn't require it again later. This server was on the public network and therefore was not managed by the remote IT team as an internal computer, and had no corporate policies installed. There was no confidential information on it. I had passed this by the appropriate channels and was given some guidelines to follow. If all was followed, I was allowed to have the server running. Everyone seemed to think it was a great idea and it really helped. It was a lot of upkeep. Every time a new software update was released, I would have to unfreeze, transfer, and then refreeze the computers. If a new demo image was installed on the computers, I would have to redo it as well. It would take a few hours to get done. I was happy to do it. It saved a lot of time in the end, and we were able to offer better service to customers. Well, the person in charge of the demo computers did not like it. Apparently, corporate didn't either. I was told I could not modify the demo computers in any way. I came up with a solution. With the server already running, I would share the logins with the technical support team. I could grant admin access on the server. They could run the tools needed, more specifically RecPut. And should a restore image be needed, they could transfer it locally over the network to the demo computer they were using, much faster. All was well until we got a new lead technician, Jeb. Now, unlike other stories, Jeb was not an external hire, but a technician who had been promoted. We had worked together for a few years at this point, and he was actually a decent guy. I'm not sure if the power went to his head, he just wanted to impress upper management, or if he was being pressured by management, but after being promoted he became a different person. Suddenly he was the boss and things were done his way, and that was that. During a physical inventory of the store, it was noted that my server was not a managed internal server, nor was it a demo unit for customers. As such, it needed to be decommissioned and the hardware returned to the warehouse. Jeb brings this to my attention, as I am the one who takes care of internal devices. He asks that I make it gone by the end of the next day. I pointed out that I had followed the guidelines and that he knew full well how useful this was. I brought up that it would impact his metrics on customer wait time and satisfaction, something I'm sure he was hoping to improve. He wouldn't have it. He cited that any computer on the network needed to be managed and my server was no longer approved. He also let me know that the 2 laptops that were being used by the technicians were going to have an image installed on them and now be managed units. I tried to argue, at least for my server, and he threatened to write me up. Alright, I'll let you dig your own grave. He also sent out an email to the whole technical support team pretty much forbidding the use of any non-approved software. I wiped my server and sent it back to the warehouse. Without my server and now the 2 laptops being managed, no one had an admin password except me and the IT team, who was remote, and tickets were usually only responded to in 48 hours, but being managed, no unapproved software could be installed anyways. Cue the next night, first day without the server, when I get a call from Jeb in a panic, asking how he could get Recplit working, and he really needed it. I had the pleasure of telling him that the server was gone and no unapproved software could be installed. As per company policy, the admin password could not be provided unless a ticket was opened with IT and his need for it was approved, which was likely to take a few days, if it was even approved. Turns out a customer started throwing a fit. Not only one but multiple people over the course of the day, and each time it was escalated to him to deal with. Each time having my server would have put a swift end to the problem. This particular customer had an iPhone that was about 1.5 years, only 1 year of warranty, and the home button stopped working. They had been in previously and were given the options of the virtual home button free, paying for a replacement phone a few $100s, or buying a brand new phone. Repairing the home button was not a repair offered. They had opted for the free option. This time the customer's kid had played with the phone, entered the passcode wrong, and the phone was disabled. Of course, the customer doesn't have iCloud set up or a recent backup, so no remote wipe and no way of backing up the info. To top it off, they would have to spend hundreds of dollars for a replacement phone or buy a brand new one. Having had the phone less than 2 years, their phone contract was not up for renewal with their cell phone provider. Needless to say, the customer was pissed. After that day, customer satisfaction and wait times tanked. He had to deal with a lot more escalations. He definitely was not looking good in the eyes of management. After a few months, he was demoted back to technician. I didn't advocate to bring my solutions back. I left the company shortly after. I worked ahead of schedule, but I guess I don't work for you anymore. This is a story one of my co-workers told me while we were chatting in the lab. He's a recent hire after getting laid off from one of the big 3 car companies. An unfortunately very common history for someone to have in my area. However, he was cheered up immensely because of how badly they'd screwed themselves by letting him go. He told me how the company had him specialize in a very technical software project, being the only guy who knew how to use the requisite tools and being the de facto expert on how the code was structured and how it worked. No one else felt the need to get up to speed or brush up on it because he handled it all. He had so much free time, being put on no other assignments, that he ended up working way ahead of schedule and finishing not only the software, but the security audits, reports, and all sorts of documentation that would have been necessary once the project was finalized. He kept these pre-produced deliverables on his personal directory so that he could have them ready in a flash when the company asked for them. I'm sure you can see where this is going. Well, a car company's favorite pastime is layoffs, and they decided he was no longer necessary and canned him. In retrospect, their unwillingness to get him started on any other project was a red flag. Knowing exactly what kind of hot water they'd be in without him, he happily deactivated his employee account and subsequently deleted everything on his personal drive. The remaining project team members rapidly discovered how screwed they were when they tried to provide a status on his software, and realized none of them knew anything about how it worked, how finished it was, or how to continue working on it. No one had bothered to have it explained while he was still there. One of his buddies on the team called him up a few days later begging him to help him out and just let them have the files he'd completed ahead of time. My coworker felt conflicted because he had no real grudge against the employees who were stuck in this situation, but obviously no one had those files anymore since he was no longer an employee. He basically told his friend that the company had dug its own grave and he couldn't help in any way besides giving him some tips off the top of his head from what he remembered. He told me he somewhat regretted helping them out on his own time, but ultimately just hoped management learned their lesson. And because I've read similar stories on this sub, I told him that's when you call back and give them your quote for freelance work. I'm not a student, I'm actually a teach nope off to detention with you. Shout out to the people who were accused of being a student when they had already graduated. I've recently started out as a teacher. I was 27 when I had my first teaching job, did some other stuff before, and of course, as the newbie, not everyone working at that school knew me at the time. I look a bit younger than my age and I usually wear a pair of jeans and a nice blouse, shirt. I was working there for a bit over a month when I was walking through the hallways of the school during class hours, picking up some paperwork and heading to the teacher's room as I had a free period. An older man, I guess in his 40s, stopped me, looking kind of angry. Unknown man: "Excuse me, young lady, where do you think you're going? Why aren't you in class?" Me: I'm not actually a student, but I'm a unknown man: "Like hell you are, I've seen you walking around with the older kids. Go to your class immediately." Me: "Sir, I'm really not a student, but I'm actually a teacher. I'm new here so you probably haven't seen me, but..." Unknown man: "Stop your lying, go report to the office immediately. I will make sure your parents hear of this. And don't think I won't be looking for you in detention tomorrow." Me goes to the office as I needed to go there anyway to ask something, and because this guy was way taller than me and looking really angry. My colleagues in the office: "What happened to you?" Me: "I got sent here because I was outside during class hours. Also, could you call my parents because a man expects me in detention tomorrow." My colleagues basically died of laughter right there. And because there's usually more than one teacher keeping an eye out during detention, and thus I couldn't tell them who of the two males that were actually scheduled for detention the next day had given me detention. They actually sent me to detention the next day. You'll see in a bit why. I took some grading work with me. The unknown man who sent me to detention was looking smug as shit when he saw me sitting in detention. After a few minutes, one of my colleagues from the office came in and, in the most theatrical voice you can imagine, introduced me as their new colleague. And wasn't I a dear for coming into detention while busy grading papers in order to help them out with unruly students just roaming the hallways during class hours? You should have seen the guy's face, priceless. For some reason he never sits at my table during lunch. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.